The Denver Broncos get their 11th straight win. This one had to be one of their biggest tests of the season in the Green Bay Packers, but they're showing us they can hang around with any teams in the NFL. They win this one 34-26. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Katie Caldwell. This is Jeff Lloyd. Jeff, a lot of their wins, it was easy to look at their opponents and kind of poke holes in their record. Green Bay is one of the hotter teams in football. This feels like they've put a lot of people on notice with this win.
I think there's no question about it. And the fact that the Green Bay Packers were favored in this game, I mean,
Yeah.
you want to talk about what probably aggravated and fired up a Denver like I
Hmm.
we're playing in Denver and they're favored. But my biggest takeaway, and like when you talk about the quarterback position overall, the biggest thing is, can you elevate the talent around you?
Hmm.
And Bo Nix, there would be a picture next to the definition. He
Agree.
goes, and when it gets clutch and it gets tough, and all of a sudden, the first touchdown pass was a guy that came up from the practice squad that morning. And, "Ken, trust me, you get home, I'm gonna throw it to you, bro. Don't worry
Yep.
about it." And, and then, some of the deep balls late in the games, just some of the kill shots that he was able to do to close it out. This Denver
Hmm.
team, and, I have probably, certainly undersold this team to this point. We each had our AFC West darling this year, neither of which was the Kansas City Chiefs. You were definitely more on the Denver Broncos. But you look at the way this offense is, and look, the running game, it still needs to get better, which seems
Hmm.
odd because their offensive line is so really good.
It's
So it
so
kinda
good.
maybe
Yeah.
tells me that maybe the problem, and there had to be a reason, obviously, why J.K. Dobbins basically showed up there, worked out, was signed, and then within 12 hours was the number 1 running back. Obviously, the
Mm.
Denver Broncos themselves felt that maybe they were missing a little something at that position. But, RJ Harvey yesterday, a fumble, it didn't come back to haunt them. But and then you could just get to that Broncos defense and, 2 takeaways, 2 interceptions yesterday, 3 sacks. The defense is just an absolutely incredible unit.
Yeah.
They're deep. They get pass rush from the interior. They get pass rush, obviously, from the outside. They're just overall just an extremely well-rounded team. And basically where we're at is it's gonna, basically what is it gonna look like? Because this
Mhm.
is it. Denver's got the target as far as the AFC is concerned. Are they gonna be able to go and just basically run with this all the way through the end of January?
Their defense just looks unbelievable. It's like they're getting better every game. But yeah, one of my big takeaways from this one was Bo Nix, another really, really great game, one of his best, which I think I said that a couple weeks ago too. You and I have talked a lot this season about just the inconsistency of this offense. If I'm a Broncos fan, I'm getting less worried about that by the week. He is just making play after play. And like you said, really elevating the guys around him.
And I don't want to. In no way am I comparing Bo Nix to Tom Brady. But what people don't understand, and I know, Katie, you were younger, but in the infancy of Tom Brady in New England, there were no big names.
Mm,
One of two of his biggest targets early on was a guy named David Patton and a guy named David Gibbons. Doubt anybody here remembers those names.
yeah.
But in the beginning, Tom Brady was not playing with an exceptional talent around him. So I think with Bo Nix, and that's what I get back to, where he is elevating people around him. Denver's gonna obviously always look to add more, and there may be, a chance where they get a wide receiver who comes in and is just overly more talented than anybody they have on their roster, which would be a really scary thought probably for the rest of the AFC. But
Mhm.
it also, success. And it makes it so much easier to keep 53 guys dialed in when everything you're being preached to results to you winning each and every week. Obviously, Peyton, this is nothing new to him. He's already done this once down in New Orleans. So here he is doing it again in Denver. And of course, his resume speaks for himself. And when guys start to believe it, and you get the Marvin Mimses of the world and the Cortland Suttons of the world, who, I don't know where to view Cortland Sutton as an overall wide receiver, but as far as being a great fit and a great guy, as far as production is concerned for Bo Nix, there are 0 questions about it. I mean, he fits hand to glove with what
Mhm.
Bo Nix wants to do. Then you throw in, obviously, the running ability of a guy like Bo Nix and just the overall, and they just play smart. They don't really make any mistakes. They don't ever, basically shoot themselves in the foot in any way
Yeah.
whatsoever. And, they've earned where they are. It's not just because Kansas City had a really rough year. It's not because Buffalo, ended up in their first conference battle in forever. No, Denver right now is 100% the class act of the AFC. They have earned it,
Mhm.
they have achieved it, and they have grown to be there. Great quarterback play, sound defense. You don't turn it over.
Mhm.
Pretty simple recipe.
Well, and one thing that stood out to me in this one too, the Broncos were 4 for 4 in the red zone. The Packers were 1 for 4, 1 touchdown, 3 field goals. So, as I think this does speak to the Denver defense, but it feels like as much as this was a missed opportunity for the Packers and left a lot of points on the table here.
Well, for Green Bay, and this is the thing, because you weren't necessarily seeing this the last 2 weeks. Obviously, Jordan Love had 2
Mhm.
incredible ball games. I believe it was 7 total touchdown passes his last 2 games before this game. And, maybe a tad bit different, different opponent in Denver on the road, not necessarily the easiest place to play. And, Green Bay, on Thanksgiving played with a lead against the Bears. We're playing with the lead. It's a
Mhm.
lot different in that scenario. And for parts of this game, they did obviously have the lead. But, what you see and kind of things we've talked about with Green Bay this year is when they have healthy Josh Jacobs, that masks maybe that their passing game at times looks better than maybe it actually is. And
Right.
yesterday was one of those games where they got some great production out of Josh Jacobs and
Mhm.
Denver, being the quality defense they were. Okay, well, we're just going to take number 8 away and let's see what you can do from there. Christian Watson obviously went down. News looks like it's not a broken collarbone. So good news for him because he's been hurt a
Yeah.
ton. And obviously, even better news for Green Bay. Don't know necessarily that he'll be available this week as they have to go play the Bears yet again this Sunday, which now all of a sudden looks like a little bit of a lot tougher matchup, certainly for Green Bay.
Mhm.
But, for Green Bay, it's the question of going the entire 18 weeks.
Mm.
And, there's been times where it's just not looked that great. We joked about that tie, but that tie did kind of help them from things. And now
Yep.
for a second straight week, here is a team that was sitting at number 1 in the NFC, but loses a game, and now all of a sudden drops all the way back down to the 7 seed. This has happened
Yep.
now for the second week in a row in the NFC. The margin for error is just so minimal that the pressure is even greater. And unfortunately, it got the best of Jordan Love and the Packers yesterday.
Well, in other just awful news for the Packers, Micah Parsons goes down with a non-contact ACL injury. What does this mean for the defense for the rest of the season? Because obviously they invested a lot in him, but he is just such a big part of that defense.
Puts you right back to where we were August 29th. And I will remember the day I moved my daughter into college, got in the car, and there was the phone blowing up that the trade had finally come through. Micah Parsons was going to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I remember checking my
And
phone too that day.
Mhm. And
Oh,
all of a
something
sudden,
happened.
everybody just all of a sudden basically had anointed the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, I think probably rightfully so. Jordan Love at times can be a little bit inconsistent, but now here's the problem is you lost that absolute and his
The game
production
record that
is
we always talk about.
absolutely. He's production-wise, not necessarily there with Myles Garrett, but the effect on the game. And this is where
Mhm.
he's different than most any other pass rusher in the entire NFL, is because he can line over the left tackle, he can line up over the right tackle, he can line up over a guard,
Yeah.
he can stand up 3 yards over a center, he can actually play some traditional linebacker. I would never do it, but other teams seem to do it every now and then with him. But now you lose him. And now all of a sudden, this defense that you thought was good but needed to make that multi-aggressive move of going to get a player like Micah Parsons, and
Mhm.
now he's not here. And now, sadly for them, Parsons, obviously, this is another thing we're lingering probably into 2026. You don't have a first round pick. You
Right.
can't just say, let's go get another pass rusher. And then when we get Micah back, that's it, man. They're going to double up. So that's a
Mhm.
situation you don't even have. But how do you manage this now for the rest of the regular season? The
Yeah.
first thing is the emotional aspect of it. You've got to get over it. And Micah walked in there, and for a team that doesn't never really have the Packers, there's just no face of that team. Who's the leader? Who's the fiery guy? The second Parsons walked in, yeah, that was answered. You knew who that
Mm.
guy was. So now it's basically the same other 52 guys that they had before they brought Micah in. The pressure's even greater because you don't have a margin for error on offense because
Right.
Parsons can't erase those things and cover up those. shortcomings on offense, some of his play on the defensive side of the ball. I think the season really just took a really rough turn for Green Bay because you have a Chicago team that's really inspired right now.
Mhm.
Detroit, we'll see, but that offense is still just so potent and can go off at any given time.
Yeah.
So, for Green Bay, I think this was an extremely tough blow because I think this was a team that we, figured at least home playoff game, real legit shot at NFC Championship game. Hey, Super Bowl could be in our sights, and it could honestly be one and done for Green Bay right now if they even make it.
Last question for you, Jeff. Did this game teach you anything about either of these 2 teams?
I am more in now on the Denver Broncos than he would ever be, and I think the thing is,
Okay.
probably what my issue was is I probably didn't realize the consistency of this defense. And look, there's weeks where Bo Nix has had to do some yeoman work, that giant game. Certainly,
Yeah.
yesterday dropping 34 on a Green Bay team. But I think when Denver gets into these playoff games, I don't think it's gonna necessarily be so much about what Bo Nix and the offense has to do, as opposed to how much the Denver defense did to the
Yeah.
opposing offense. I think it could be some light work through a couple of playoff games for Denver because this defense is just so dialed in. And, if you block the outside, you're getting crushed from the inside. And then you got to try and beat these corners, and they're both great ball hawks. They're a really fun team. They're really, really sound, and they're extremely well rounded.